Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast from Agriland keeping you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined this week by O'Brien and Breifne O'Brien. We have a very busy podcast ahead of us, so let's get straight into it. The chairperson of the board of Bord Bia, Larry Murren, has been embroiled in controversy this week over the sourcing of beef from Brazil by the company he is CEO of. As reported by Agriland last week, Dawn Farm Foods, which supplies beef to Subway sandwich shops in Ireland, acknowledged that it sources about 1% of its beef supply from Brazil, although the business said that the Brazilian beef was not supplied to Subway outlets in Ireland. Aisling, this story has evolved quickly over the last few days and it's an ongoing story as we speak, but can you maybe tell us how it all started and take us up to speed on the events of this week?
Yes, Charles. As you said, we reported here on Agriland how the beef plan movement first drew attention to Dawn Farm Foods' sourcing policy last week after one of its members noticed a sign that was displayed in a Subway restaurant in the country. Now, the sign stated that Dawn Farm Foods Limited certifies that the raw materials used in the production of the beef products supplied to Subway restaurants in Ireland are currently sourced from EU-approved plants in Europe and Brazil. Now, Subway subsequently confirmed to Agriland that it did not source any beef from Brazil for its Irish restaurants in 2025 and has no plans to do so. Dawn Farms also told Agriland that in 2025 Irish beef made up the majority of its supply and together with the UK and other EU countries accounted for 99% of the company's annual supply. It added that Brazilian beef accounted for the remaining 1%. And Dawn Farm Foods added that it continues to be a very strong supporter and customer of the Irish beef industry and remains committed to sourcing significant volumes of supply from Irish sources in the years ahead. Now, Larry Murren, who's CEO of Dawn Farms, was appointed as chair of the board of Bord Bia in April 2024 for a period of 3 years by then Minister for Agriculture, Charlie McConalogue. Now, following the statement from Dawn Farms that it sourced 1% of its beef from Brazil last year, there were numerous calls from farm organisations and politicians on Larry Murren to consider his position as Bord Bia chair, which, of course, Bord Bia is tasked with promoting Irish agri-food both here in Ireland and abroad. Now, the government came to the defence of Larry Murren in the Dáil on Wednesday. Taoiseach Micheál Martin told the Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald that Bord Bia has been performing exceptionally well after she called for Larry Murren to resign as chair of Bord Bia. She actually wrote to the Taoiseach saying that she believes Larry Murren's role as chair of Bord Bia is incompatible with his role in Dawn Farms. And Minister for Agriculture Martin Hayden said that Larry Murren has discharged his duties satisfactorily since he was appointed as chair of Bord Bia in 2024. Now, there are 14 members on the board of Bord Bia, which includes the Irish Farmers Association and the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association. Now, following the statement from Dawn Farms, IFA President Francie Gorman said that he was very concerned about the statement and the confirmation that Dawn Farms had sourced some beef from Brazil. And he had raised his concerns, he said, through the appropriate channels with Bord Bia. The ICMSA President Dennis Drennan also voiced their concerns about the statement, and they also called for a public register to be set up naming companies that buy beef from Brazil and other countries outside of the EU, which would also be referred to as third countries. Now, in a letter to the board sent on January 19th, Larry Murren outlined his position in some detail, and you can read it, the majority of that letter on Agriland. But he did clarify that Dawn Farm Foods, which he co-founded, is a leading exporter of added value cooked protein, working with international and local customers in over 50 markets. He said that a direct link has been drawn between my role as chairperson of Bord Bia and the operation practices of my company, and I wish to convey to you, the board, that I am now and have always been a steadfast advocate of Irish meat and its production standards. So on the back of all this controversy and I suppose the statements from Francie Gorman and the ICMSA, there was a special meeting of the board convened at Bord Bia headquarters yesterday, Charles. And speaking after the meeting, IFA President Francie Gorman said that he had sought the resignation of Larry Murren as chair of Bord Bia during that meeting. And he said, when the chair refused to resign, I made a formal proposal to the board that the chair be removed in the best interests of Board Bia. The acting chair did not put the proposal to the meeting, as he said it was a matter for the Minister for Agriculture, Martin Hayden. Now, the ICMSA also called for the removal of Larry Murren as chair, and the ICSA held a protest outside the meeting as well, calling for his removal. Now, following the meeting, Jim O'Toole, the chief executive of Board Bia, confirmed in a statement that Larry Murren remains as chair of Board Bia. And he said, following a full, open and considered discussion at board level where all perspectives were fully heard and carefully weighed, the board of Board Bia reached an outcome to support Larry Murren as chair of Board Bia. Importantly, though, Charles, he noted, this was not unanimous, with the farmer organisations represented on the board, IFA and ICMSA, not supporting the chairman. And O'Toole said the board had unanimously commended the chairman, recognising his significant contribution to the sector and the invaluable industry experience he brings to the role. Now, Board Bia last night sent a report on the meeting to Minister Martin Hayden, and following that, the minister issued quite a lengthy statement. But I suppose that the main part of that statement was the minister saying that Larry Murren has his full confidence to continue in his role as chair of Board Bia. And he said that he has been informed by the board that it had a good and thorough discussion of the issues covered in the media in recent days, and that the majority, while not unanimous, of board members were fully supportive of the chair continuing to serve. He said he completely understood the emotion for farmers when it comes to issues associated with the integrated nature of food supply around the globe. Recent debates around the Mercosur trade deal highlight Irish farmers' unease for imported product from outside the EU, he said. But he said that we also must recognise that as a food-producing island, we export 90% of that food and Irish food and drink product, and we depend on that very integrated trade. And he said the work of Board Bia is crucial to that success. He also said it would be irresponsible to just follow emotion in relation to the media reports this week regarding the chairman of Board Bia, when it is accepted by all that no rules were broken by him or his company. So a report on that meeting from Board Bia, we've seen it here in Agriland, and we have that up on our website, and you can have a read through that. There's quite a lot, as you said, Charles, to this story. We'll have to wait and see what the next move from farm organisations is on this. It looks like the government are backing Larry Murren and that he has the confidence of the Minister for Agriculture. We are hearing obviously from farmers on the ground who are part of the Board Bia quality assurance schemes and that obviously have to undergo audits for their produce, that they're quite annoyed about this revelation as they see it in relation to Dawn Farms, and obviously the link back then to Larry Murren being chair of Board Bia. But as you said, this is a developing story, and we'll wait and see where it goes next.
Well, that story is a concern for farmer suppliers, especially those under Board Bia's quality assurance schemes. Something else that suppliers should be aware of is that the Agri-Food Regulator has launched its second annual supplier survey aimed at producers supplying product to the retail and wholesale market. So be sure to check out our article on that if you're interested in taking part in that survey. Moving on, and the issue of the EU Mercosur trade agreement continued to generate headlines this week, this time in relation to a vote in the European Parliament to refer the deal to the EU courts. What happened in the last few days, Aisling?
Yes, so on Wednesday, Charles, MEPs at the European Parliament's plenary or full session in Strasbourg voted to refer the EU-Mercosur Partnership Agreement and its interim trade agreement to the European Courts of Justice, essentially the highest court in Europe. So this wasn't a vote on the deal itself and its merits, Charles, for MEPs, but the motion which was passed was to refer the deal for legal advice on whether both elements, as we know the deal has been split by the EU, if those elements comply with the treaties of the EU. And this was sought by over 100 MEPs for this motion to be put to the full session of Parliament. So as we know, the agreement between the EU and the Mercosur states of Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina and Uruguay, it's split into this EMPA element, which covers cooperation on a political and policy level and sharing knowledge and research in other areas like that. And obviously then then there is the trade element as well, which covers imports and exports and reduced tariffs for products such as machinery, cars, and, as we well know on this podcast, beef as well. So we saw the majority of MEPs voting in favour of referring the deal on to the highest court in Europe, but it was by a very tight margin. 334 MEPs in favour, 324 against, with 11 abstentions. Now, it could take up to 24 months, up to 2 years, for this legal advice to be provided by the European Court of Justice. And in a statement, the European Parliament said the Parliament will continue its examination of the texts while awaiting this opinion of the EU Court. Only then will the Parliament be able to vote to grant consent or not for the agreement. So in the meantime, there is a legal framework, Charles, that the European Commission can provisionally apply the terms of the interim trade agreement. But Agriland did question the Commission on this in recent days. Should the deal be referred, which it has been, to the European Court of Justice? And a Commission spokesperson said that such a decision has not yet been made. And the Commission also told Agriland that it strongly regrets the decision by the Parliament to seek an opinion from the European Court of Justice on the compatibility of the Mercosur deal with the EU treaties. Now, 9 Irish MEPs voted for the legal referral, while 4 voted against, and there was 1 MEP absent, Luke Ming Flanagan, who could not vote due to medical reasons, but he has consistently been opposed to the deal. Now, the 4 MEPs to vote against referring the Mercosur deal to the Court of Justice were Barry Andrews, Regina Doherty, Sean Kelly and Maria Walsh. Now, Maria Walsh has repeatedly said she does not support the Mercosur deal, and while voting against the motion this week, she said was not an easy decision. She firmly believes it was the responsible one. She said this delay creates more uncertainty for Irish farmers. She said we now have 2 more years of limbo for farmers, with Mercosur continuing to hang over their heads. And she said it also opens the door to a scenario where the Commission could implement the trade elements of Mercosur before elected MEPs have the opportunity to vote on it. And she posted a video to social media following the vote to explain her decision to vote no. Have a listen to some of it.
So to me, the precedent is clear. There was no legal necessity to refer Mercosur to the court. Voting against the referral does not mean I support Mercosur. Far, far from. I've said this so many times, many, many times. I do not support this trade agreement. But what I did want and do want is for MEPs to finally have their say on the Mercosur agreement. And referring it to the court delays that up to probably 2 years. What's not being said by those who trumpet this as a victory is what this delay now creates more uncertainty for Irish farmers.
And that was MEP Maria Walsh explaining why she voted against the motion this week to refer the Mercosur deal to the European Court of Justice. MEP Barry Andrews said to Agriland that the vote leads to another long delay for the trade deal, more uncertainty for farmers, and in his view sends the wrong signal at precisely the wrong time. He said Europe needs all the friends it can get in the world these days, and Latin America has opened the door. MEP Sean Kelly said he regretted the outcome of the vote, but he does respect the decision of the majority of MPs. He said his concern is that this approach, seeking the legal opinion, undermines the decision-making power of the elected European Parliament. And Regina Doherty as well had a very similar view that this is going to lead to more of a delay for farmers and more uncertainty. Now, politicians elsewhere from across the political spectrum voiced their satisfaction at the outcome of this vote, including, of course, MEP Kieran Mullooly for Independent Ireland, who has been among the leading voices against Mercosur, especially when it came to that protest in Athlone that we saw in recent weeks, where over 20,000 farmers gathered against the deal as well. Farm organisations, understandably as well, welcoming the outcome of the vote, including Copa Cogeca, the IFA, the ICMSA, the ICSA and MOCRA. So it is, I suppose, as Martin Hayden told Agriland this week, now a matter for the European Court of Justice to consider and ultimately deliver its opinion on whether these agreements comply with EU law. So we will wait with bated breath, but I'm sure, Charles, that it's not the last of Mercosur, and no doubt we'll probably be discussing it again next week on the pod.
Staying with Mercosur now, and Breifne, you had an interesting article this week on the actual amount of beef from Mercosur countries that Ireland imported in 2025. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Charles. So there was actually over 400 tons of beef imported to Ireland from Mercosur countries. Now, that's from January to October of 2025, according to a spokesperson from the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine. So, of this beef imported from the Mercosur countries in this time frame, 145 tons of that was sourced from Brazil, and 257 tons of it was sourced from Argentina. Yeah, and in total there was 32,875 tons of beef imported to Ireland from other countries in 2025. That's including all countries that beef was imported to Ireland from.
We'll move on now and revisit Bord Bia to talk about its Meat Marketing Seminar 2026, which took place on Friday of last week. Breifne, staying with yourself, you were there for Agriland, so what were the most interesting standout points? Because I know there were interesting comments on cattle supply for 2026. So could you take us through that and some of the other key points?
Yeah, so the event took place there, Charles, last Friday, January 16th, down in the Heritage Hotel in County Laois. So it's called the Bord Bia Meat Marketing Seminar. It takes place, early in the year, January, pretty much every year. And it sees, a lot of meat industry personnel and, key stakeholders in the agri industry attending a conference where pretty much a series of speakers set out their stalls for the year on, forecasted supplies, what's happening in the markets, a little bit of a review of the previous year, and just kind of setting the scene for the market going into the new year. So it always tends to be a fairly informative event. But I suppose some of the key things that was noted from the event. Look, the ewe flock is set to stabilise, the Irish ewe flock. Now, that's after a significant reduction in sheep throughput in Ireland in 2025, which seen actually the number of sheep slaughtered in Irish factories fall by 445,000 head when compared to previous year or 2024. Looking at cattle supplies, the 2026 factory cattle supply is forecasted to remain at a fairly similar level as was seen in 2025. But I suppose that's after supplies falling by 213,000 head approximately on the previous year. So while supplies did fall fairly significantly last year, they're looking like for this year that they're going to be slightly more stable. A presentation from Bord Bia's beef sector manager Mark Zieg at the seminar highlighted that 1.59 million cattle were slaughtered in Ireland in 2025. The forecasted kill for 2026 is expected to be at approximately 1.56 to 1.6 million head. Fairly similar to that 2025 figure. I suppose some of the other interesting things that were highlighted at it, is that the Irish suckler cow population is showing signs of stabilising. So numbers declined by just over 3,000 head or 0.5% in 2025 when compared to 2024. So that 0.5% decline is actually an improvement on the drop off that we had been seeing in suckler cow numbers in recent years, and it has been well reported on Agriland, that decline in suckler cow numbers. But just to put it into perspective, I suppose from December 31st of 2023 to December of 2024, suckler cow numbers in Ireland fell by over 49,000 head, or over 6%. That's according to ICBF figures. So in December 2025, there were just over 700,000 suckler cows and just under 1.5 million dairy cows in Ireland. So overall, the consensus of the event was for declining sheep, meat and beef production in Europe. And that's, as a result of several issues, including, disease, herd and flock decline, structural decline in sheep and cattle populations in a lot of European countries. In Ireland, it's more so expected to see slightly more stability in sheep and cattle numbers after a year of major decline in both, obviously. So it will be interesting to see how that all plays out and the impact that has on the market.
Thanks for that, Breifne. We'll move on now, and we learned this week that retail packing operations at a meat processing facility in County Tyrone are set to end, with over 300 jobs potentially at risk. Aisling, what are the details here?
Yeah, Charles, unfortunately not great news coming from County Tyrone this week, as ABP Linden confirmed its intention to stop retail packing at its facility in the Granville Industrial Estate in Dungannon. So on Tuesday, ABP confirmed that it has entered into a formal consultation process with 338 staff whose jobs are at risk. ABP said it continually reviews its processing footprint to ensure that it has the most efficient operational model aligned to trading conditions and market trends. And the company said that changes in the UK landscape have led to the difficult but necessary requirement to consolidate and reduce the number of its retail packing facilities situated in the UK, including Northern Ireland. The statement also confirmed that ABP is going to seek to minimise the impact on the workers, adding that this would include redeployment where possible. And ABP Linden said it continues to receive and process cattle and sheep as usual, and the jobs at this separate facility, also located within the Granville Industrial Estate in Dungannon, are not impacted. ABP's Lurgan and Newry sites are not impacted by this announcement and continue to operate and receive livestock as usual. And Kettle Irish Foods in Lisnaskea is also not impacted by this. And a spokesperson for ABP said it has been a very difficult step, but we are facing a challenging and changing UK and global marketplace for beef and lamb, and streamlining our operations is a necessity to achieve operational efficiencies, maintain our competitiveness and strengthen our business for the long term. And the statement added that ABP UK remains committed to Northern Ireland's agri-food sector.
Moving on, and following the announcement by Minister Hayden last September that a revised action plan for TB is set to come into force to address rising disease markers, we now know when those changes are going to come into effect. Aisling, what do we know at this point?
Yeah, as we know, there has been a huge spike in the levels of TB in this country in recent years. Charles, the figures definitely going in the wrong direction. And Teagasc held a webinar this week where over 400 people tuned in to hear about the latest updates on TB. And it was confirmed during that webinar that changes announced by the Minister through the TB action plan in September of last year are set to kick in this coming April. Now, during the webinar, people who were tuned in heard from Teagasc Dairy Specialist James Dunn, Teagasc Head of Dairy Knowledge Transfer Dr. Joe Patton, and Department of Agriculture Head of Ruminant Animal Health Division Damien Barrett. Now, James Dunn said that TB continues to be a major challenge for the sector. There are, he said, 5,701 farms currently restricted, and he said it was clear that a change is needed. And Damien Barrett told attendees that TB cases are still way too high. The herd incidence rate remains at 5.68%. And he said that the infectious rate in animals is far higher than Ireland than it is in the likes of New Zealand, which is why Ireland is struggling with eradication. But he admitted that a vaccination would be the holy grail in eventually eradicating the disease. He said it would be a game changer, but as it currently stands, we can't differentiate between vaccinated and infected cattle, and we need the test that can differentiate that. So he said we cannot wait around for a vaccine, and this is why the action plan will have to kick into force. He said there was also a big problem when it comes to eradication with residual infections as well, and he said that background levels of TB in the population have been increasing by 13 or 14% year on year since dairy quotas were abolished back in 2015 as well. Now, when speaking about the action plan, Barrett said that we're trying to set about in this plan to empower people to make decisions, to take back control and not be controlled by this disease. He said we're not declaring victory, and we won't be declaring victory anytime soon because we're not in a position to. But at this point in time, we've stopped it going up. He said we need to take aggressive action to start to push it down, and this action plan is designed to do that. So as we know from last year, there are 5 high-level measures contained in the TB action plan, which are underpinned by some 30 different actions, including changes around TB testing when it comes to certain movements of cattle. And you can see a full breakdown of all those rules and measures and actions on the Agriland website as well.
Before we move on, we'll briefly divert our attention to milk prices. We've seen both Tyrone and Carberry Group announce milk prices in recent days. Tyrone said it will pay a total of 41.08 cent per litre for December, and that includes an unconditional seasonality bonus payment to be paid over the next 3 months on any milk volumes that do not qualify for liquid premium or the autumn calving scheme. The rates of payment of that bonus are 5 cent a litre for December, 7 cent a litre for January, and 5 cent a litre for February. Tyrone also confirmed its intention to hold the current milk price for January and February supplies subject to any unforeseen events. Meanwhile, Carbery Group announced that its average milk price for supplies in December will be reduced compared to the figure for November milk, with the average milk price working out at 36.7 cent per litre. And we also had a GDT index update this week, with the index increasing by a further 1.5% for the second consecutive increase in the GDT. Now, moving into the area of farm schemes, the Department of Agriculture has revealed proposed changes to the Space for Nature aspect of the CAP Pillar 1 Eco Scheme. What do we know about this, Aisling?
Yeah, so the Space for Nature option in the Eco Scheme supports and rewards farmers for biodiversity actions, Charles. But according to the department, from scheme year 2026, there are potentially changes coming in the pipeline. As a result of these changes, the percentage on some herds would be different because landscape features located adjacent to artificial or man-made features within an eligible hectare would no longer receive credit in terms of Space for Nature. Instead, the department said a zero value will be applied and visible on LPIS, which of course is the Land Parcel Identification System maps, to indicate where features such as hedgerows, trees, stone walls on a parcel are adjacent to a farmyard, recreational areas or buildings. Now, before these proposed changes, farmers had received credit on these areas. So reacting to the changes this week, Deputy President of the ICMSA, Eamon Carroll, said that the proposals mean just more regulations on farmers. He said it was inexplicable that features that were eligible for the scheme from 2023 to last year are to be considered to be no longer containing nature and have been excluded. He questioned how the proposed changes to the eco scheme this year would align with the European Commission's simplification agenda, and he's urged the Minister for Agriculture to intervene in relation to these proposed changes. And look, as we know from the latest scheme payments, Charles, at the moment, just over €297 million has been paid out to over 115,600 farmers for the eco scheme in 2025. So, these proposed changes could potentially affect a lot of farmers out there.
Finally, when we were here on the podcast last week, we discussed Ireland's favourite brand of tractor, and Gurteen College in County Tipperary seems to have very much nailed its colours to the mast. Or should I say, nailed its colours to the Massey, Aisling?
Absolutely, Charles, because Gurteen College has taken delivery of 6 Massey Ferguson tractors this week on lease from EV Condell in Portlaoise, following what they say was a robust tendering process. Now, this hire fleet consists of 6 tractors of various models. The larger 3 are Dyna 6 with full auto guidance and all the bells and whistles that you can expect. And look, it's located in Roscrea, Gurteen College. It teaches level 5 and 6 certificates in agriculture, and students can specialise in dairy, dry stock or agricultural mechanisation. And the college also offers a degree in agricultural science and sustainability as well. Now, Gurteen undertakes almost all of its machinery work. So this new fleet, it's not going to be laying idle for very long, I'm sure, Charles, because it's spreading slurry, fertiliser, establishing winter cereals. They'll all be put to good work. And as the year goes on, then of course they'll be used maybe for reseeding, mowing, baling as well. And the second year students who specialise in agricultural mechanisation will also use the tractors to plough, to till, to sow. All of the college's winter cereals, and the smaller tractors will be used to help teach the fundamentals of tractor operations as well. So it's like a bit of a delayed Christmas present there for the students at Gurteen, those 6 new tractors landing to them, those 6 new Massey Fergusons. And as you said, kind of a little bit away from what we had last week, because those figures from the Farm Tractor and Machinery Trade Association, the FTMTA, for 2024 revealed that John Deere was the most popular brand of tractor in the country, and I'm sure that debate will rage on, Charles. But yeah, as you said, Gurteen very much nailing their colours to the Massey mast.
That almost brings us to the end. Just a few bits of housekeeping to finish up. The Health and Safety Authority is currently in the middle of an inspection campaign that started on Monday on livestock handling. That is a 2-week campaign that the HSA is currently in the middle of, so don't be surprised if HSA inspectors come calling just to make sure everything is shipshape and that livestock handling risks are mitigated. Also, the department has issued an update on key information and dates for farm partnerships in 2026. Applicants wishing to have their registered farm partnership number in time to submit by the 2026 BIS scheme deadline must submit a fully completed application by February 2nd, 2026. And you can check out other important information on that article on Agriland. Elsewhere, a short extension to the deadline for submitting applications under the 2026 Schemes of Investment Aid for Innovation and Diversification in Horticulture has been announced. The department has confirmed the closing date for applications to these schemes has been extended to midnight on February 3rd. And very finally, Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine Martin Hayden has announced that participants in the Suckler Carbon Efficiency Programme now have access to amend their 2026 yearly reference number if they wish to do so. Farmers can amend their number between now and February 12th. And that brings us to the end of the show. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling, Breifne and myself, all the best.